This here is an Impala SS powered by an LS4 V8, putting out 303 horsepower. And at one time, when I was a kid, this was my dream car. There's a story I want to tell you guys about. There was this time my dad and I were jogging. I was 12 years old, and I remember this guy in a black Impala SS comes rumbling forward. You hear that LS4 V8, and the guy stopped, asked us for directions, and I thought he was the coolest guy ever. This car was so cool. I thought this was unique, this SS logo up here. And we gave him directions and he was on his way, and I thought that was the coolest. I'll let you guys in on a little secret here. This car is my first car that I really fell in love with. And the reason being was, you know, at the time I didn't really know much about cars. Because if I did, I would realize, hey, you know what, front wheel drive, V8, it's kind of weird, and it's not on really a performance platform chassis. It's not the best car, but I fell in love with it because it embodied the spirit of the old muscle cars. You know, the big thumping V8 up front, however, it didn't have rear wheel drive. But at the time, I didn't know that. I thought it was cool. I thought 303 horsepower, wow, that's a lot. In today's standard, that's normal. But at the time, when this car came out in 2006, it was a lot. This LS4 V8 was pretty good. So, if you wanted to be really cool in the mid-2000s, what would you drive? You would probably drive something like this. A 2008 Impala SS. Why? Because, well, it came with the 5.3 liter V8 that put out 303 horsepower and 323 pound-foot of torque. What a lot of people don't know, or do know if you were maybe really into these cars in those days, is it shares a lot of bones with the police package Impala, the 9C1 package. What did it share? It shared heavy-duty suspension, heavy-duty transmission, it had a heavy-duty alternator, and it had a heavy-duty radiator and heavy-duty brakes. What does that make this car? One really cool and bulletproof heavy-duty car that you can just drive for days, just like the cops, keep the engine running 24/7, who cares, and it won't do anything to this car. The reason why I fell in love with this car is because this guy right here, number 48, Jimmy Johnson, won championship after championship with this car. And I thought that was cool. You know, we do know that a NASCAR isn't the same as a street legal car, but the name Impala SS, that was freaking cool. Think about that. You know, you're driving, this car is black, a black sedan that has a V8 up front, and it has NASCAR pedigree. What more can you ask for? And I think that's why it's cool. And that's why I think a lot of the older generation that ended up, you know, buying this car when it was new, fell in love with this car. It meant a lot. It was a sports sedan. And what does a sports sedan mean? It means that it's big, it's comfortable, but it should be fast. And this car, you know, whether you like it or not, is relatively fast. This engine was first introduced in the 2005 Pontiac Grand Prix GXP. And then in 2006, it was introduced in the Impala SS and the Buick LaCrosse Super. Now this car is kind of weird. So what makes it really unique is it's the only LS engine in any General Motors vehicle that had a transverse configuration. I call this the Frankenstein car. Think about it. It's front wheel drive V8 that has a 4-speed automatic transmission. That's kind of weird. You'd think that a V8 should be rear wheel drive. In my opinion, it should. When they introduced this mid-size, full-size sedan General Motors in 2000, it went to front wheel drive. The old, you know, dome car, the old Impala, the 1995, 1996 Impala that we all love, which was rear wheel drive, was the last rear wheel drive version of the Impala. Then it went front wheel drive. Now, front wheel drive does have its benefits. It's more controllable in the winter. It's more predictable. However, it's not a performance platform. You got to remember that. Even though this has a big stinking V8 that sounds amazing, it doesn't make performance numbers. It's not like a track car. You can't really do burnouts in the rear. This engine had something called active fuel management, or displacement on demand. And the thing about displacement on demand is it's supposed to make the engine more fuel efficient, basically cutting off 4 of the cylinders by using special lifters that shut off contact of the push rod to make the engine more fuel efficient. Don't consume as much fuel. In theory, this works great. You get better fuel economy, especially when you're cruising. Just think about this. This is a big car, lots of space. You could just cruise for days on this car. You know, you just take this car for a long road trip, and with 3 people in the back, 1 person on the side, and you're just having fun. It absorbs bumps like it's nothing. You want to overtake a truck? No problem. Go into the left lane and just freaking overtake it. It's amazing in that sense, but it becomes less reliable. You get the lifter failure, you get the lifter knock for sure, just like every other LS engine that had this. Now this engine didn't have true dual exhaust. It still sounds good, has a good rumble, but not true dual exhaust. It had almost a Y pipe that split off into 2 exhaust pipes and then. So it didn't sound like that equal length, you know, Corvette sound we all love that the Corvette and even the Camaro makes. Just like all early generation LS engines, this had cathedral ported heads. What that meant was you got good low to mid-end power. And then that's why they ended up going into square ported heads later on with LS engines, the LS3 for example. You create better horsepower at the higher end. Now back to the LS4 in these cars. Like I said, it's the Frankenstein of cars. Really cool. Think about it. You drive around in a black Impala SS, you know, just cruising around. Wow. Like, everyone knows this car and it rumbles. It was meant to compete with the Dodge Charger, except the Dodge Charger had one thing right. It was rear-wheel drive. The Impala didn't. And they ended up discontinuing the Impala later on. Now this engine stopped being used in the Impala in 2009, which is a shame. That's why I think this engine was put in this car. The spirit of the Impala is supposed to be a big 4-door sedan muscle car. So what makes a muscle car? A V8, a small block Chevy. And that's what makes this car really unique and really cool. And it's pretty fast. You can get 0 to 60 mile per hour times in about 5.5, 5.7 seconds. And you know what? That's fast enough. And when you blow by someone doing 100 miles per hour and it sounds almost like a Corvette because of that small block Chevy, then you realize, wow, this is a fun, cool car. It did a burnout thing. Now, even though this car didn't get much praise and like from the public, it's still an amazing and cool car. It's good all year round. As you see, these are steel rims, and the reason why they have steel rims and not the standard aluminum rims it came with is because these are winter tires. It performs so good in the winter because it's front-wheel drive and it has gulps of torque up front. Just amazing. You know, if you want to do a front-wheel burnout, you could do that all day long. I love it. I love it. It will put a smile on your face. You could probably pick one of these up in good condition for $5,000, $8,000. And heck, if you just want a car to cruise around with that's reliable, parts are easy to get because it's still an LS engine up front, this is her. Now, it is showing its age. It's a little rust in some areas, but other than that, it's an amazing car, and that's why I love the LS4 V8 in these full-size Chevrolet sedans.